Out of interest, Betty Yee, what is your view of trans athletes in women's sport?
Well, I think I always want to be sure that we are being inclusive in sports. And so I think there are ways to still have them participate in sports and try to quell, just some of the controversy around it. I think everyone has an opportunity to participate in sports.
I observe at once that we are not so much embarking upon a debate as embarking upon a foggy channel crossing, no maps, no compass, and a firm belief that conviction alone will steer the ship. Mr. Morgan advances with the subtlety of a charging rhinoceros, while Mrs. Yee responds with the serene confidence of someone who has decided that definitions are merely rude suggestions.
Trans athletes to be able to participate in sport. The issue is whether they should be allowed to compete in women's sport against actual women who are biological females who obviously have a inferior physiology in the main in terms of lung capacity, muscle mass, and so on. Do you think that would be right?
They are now part of, they have been through a transition, a physical transition, and I do believe that they should be able to participate with other female athletes.
Wow, well, you've got the Olympics coming to California, to LA. So are you suggesting that you would allow trans athletes to compete in women's sport in the Olympics if you were governor?
Well, I think there's still a lot of discussion that needs to happen. I think there's a lot of information we need to learn about what's really happening with the ability of trans athletes to compete. But my statement is about being able to be sure that they can compete. And right now, there's
my question is whether you think they should compete in women's sport in the Olympics, because it's coming to LA, so it's relevant.
I think transgender female athletes are women athletes, and they should be able to compete.
Really?
Here we arrive at the great philosophical quandary of our age. Once men asked, what is truth? Now we ask, what is a women's sporting category? And who packed it this morning? The question is posed plainly enough. The answer, however, is wrapped in such layers of abstraction that by the time it emerges, it resembles less a reply and more a cloud formation drifting optimistically toward meaning.
So if you were governor of California, you would support biological males who identify as women competing in women's sport in the Olympics?
They are now identified as transgender female.
And you think that makes, and you think it's fair that they should then compete in women's sport?
I think they should be able to compete in women's sports, but I also think that there is still some discussion about whether they should compete in the same field. But I just want them to be able to participate.
Sure, I'm sure you do. Why, out of interest, why do you think we separate the sexes in the Olympics?
Well, because they do come with different attributes in terms of physicality. And
so you accept that we separate the sexes because men have a physical advantage over women?
And here we reach the most remarkable confession of the evening. With admirable candor, she concedes that the sexes are separated in sport because men possess a physical advantage over women. The fact is stated plainly, courageously, and most impressively, without the faintest awareness of its consequences. The logic arrives at the station precisely on time, steps onto the platform, waves politely to the speaker, and is then ignored entirely as the train of opinion departs in the opposite direction. Thus, we are invited to accept a world in which advantage exists, is admitted, is understood, and is treated as though it were a minor clerical error. Reality, having made its brief appearance, is thanked for coming and shown the door.
I know about an advantage in some sports, yes, in other sports, maybe not.
Can you think of a single sport in the Olympics where men would not have an advantage over women, with the exception potentially of archery?
You know, I think you can see female athletes where, particularly in track and field, where agility is probably...
Hang on, are you suggesting that women... So hang on, you think that women could compete against men in track and field, like in 100 meters, 200 meters, 10,000 meters, do you?
Perhaps. You know, I'm not a sports expert. But...
Oh, of course they couldn't. Have you seen Have you seen the times that women and men record in the Olympics for all track and field events? Have you watched Usain Bolt when he smashed the world record for the 100 meters?
Yes, yes.
So you think women could run against Usain Bolt, for example, at his peak, and that would be fair?
I think, look,
And so at last the veil is lifted. We are informed calmly, confidently, and without the slightest tremor of doubt that women may simply compete with men in track and field, and all shall be well. This is a most exhilarating proposal. Why stop there? Let us invite bantamweight boxers to spar with heavyweights, rowboats to race battleships, and dachshunds to pull artillery. Equality, after all, must never be constrained by physics. I have lived through many bold experiments in my time, but rarely have I seen biology dismissed with such cheerful nonchalance. Muscles, lung capacity, bone density. These are apparently antique superstitions, relics of a less enlightened age, like flat earth maps or leaded gasoline.
I'm just going to say this. There's a lot of misinformation about the ability of transgender athletes.
That wasn't my question. My question was, you've got the Olympics coming to your state.
Yes.
You want to be the California governor. I am actually a resident in California, in Los Angeles. So I'm very curious about your response to how you would want the Olympics to be conducted, which would be fair and equitable for women. But it seems to me like you would like to remove any sexual differentiation between the Olympic sports and let them all compete. It would be gender neutral, would it, if you were governor?
Well, I want to be sure that everyone has the ability to compete.
Right, but would you have a gender neutral Olympics where you would have you wouldn't have male and female sport then? You just have one that everyone could join in.
Well, I don't think we're going to get that tomorrow, but I think it's a conversation worth having.
You think it's a conversation worth having where you have gender neutral Olympics?
Because we need to understand what the attributes are of athletes across the spectrum.
But you've already said that you understand the reason they separate the sexes is that men have a physical advantage over women. That is why we separate the sexes in the Olympics.
In some sports, I believe so.
Tell me a sport where it would have no impact.
I do believe that women are equipped to break records in track and field, and some
Tell
other
me
sports
one
as
track
well.
and field event where a woman would beat a man in the Olympics.
Well, if
in fact, let me make it easier. Tell me a single track and field event in the Olympics where a woman would qualify for any of the finals.
Mr. Morgan presses the point repeatedly, like a man knocking on a door that is very clearly occupied, but whose inhabitants have decided to pretend they are out. One must admire the stamina. He asks the same question in 7 different ways, much as one might try, speaking louder to a Frenchman in the mistaken belief that volume improves translation.
Well, I would think that in some of the in the short course, track events.
Potentially. What do you mean? Like how long?
It's not going to be the long races, but the shorter races.
What, 100 meters, 200 meters?
Could be 100 meter, sure.
You think? I'm sorry to Betty, but given that obviously I got you on because Katie Porter wouldn't answer questions, you genuinely think that we should have a gender neutral 100 meters in the Olympics when it comes to California?
What I am saying is I don't know that we know fully. We know fully. But
why do you think? We do know fully because we know that women's 100-meter records compared to men's show that men are much, much faster over 100 meters than women. That's why we separate the sexes. Same with 200 meters, same with 400 meters, same with 5,000 meters, same with 800 meters, same with 10,000 meters. That is why we separate the sexes. If you had men and women competing in the same Olympic track and field events, women would never win a medal again. How do you not know that?
Well, let me just say this. I think we can all agree that we want people to have equal opportunity to participate. I don't know that we know frankly, just with transgender people participating in athletics, really how they would fare in competition. So I would like to be able to see full participation, and if it means having to put transgender people in a different type of division to see how they perform, we would do that.
But would you, as a principle, you would quite like to see a gender-neutral Olympics when it comes to LA?
If the physicality of the sexes bear true to that, including with transgender people, yes, it should be gender neutral. I don't think we know enough.
When at last the words, "I don't think we know enough," escape her lips, I find myself in rare agreement, though not, I suspect, in the manner she intends. For this is not a declaration of scientific humility. It is an inadvertent self-portrait. We are asked to suspend judgment, suspend evidence, suspend common sense, and hover indefinitely in a warm bath of uncertainty, lest knowledge itself give offense. Humanity has known enough to separate male and female competition since the first caveman lost a foot rust and yeah, the nation then the man and then the rematch under new rules. The stopwatch, the podium, and the broken records have been screaming the answer for a century. Ignorance, when confessed, may be forgivable, but when elevated to an argument, it becomes comedy, and not the intentional kind.
Certainly, when transgender people transition and there are participating in athletics, I think we need to know more.
Would you like boxing to be gender neutral in the Olympics?
No, of course not.
Why not?
Well, I'm not a boxing fan, and I'm not a particular big fan of the sport. It is high potential for injury and harm.
Really? So how did you feel about Imam Khalif, the Algerian boxer, competing in the Paris Olympics when Imam Khalif had failed to qualify for the world, or had been disqualified from the World Championships the year before for testing positive for male chromosomes?
I don't know much about boxing, Piers. I'm sorry. I don't have a view about it.
Okay. Betty Yee, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
Never in the field of sporting discourse has so much been said, with so many words to explain so little. One leaves the spectacle not enlightened, but entertained, vaguely alarmed, and deeply grateful that the Olympics have not yet added competitive semantics as an event.